you like leaks?
Oh yeah, I like leaks.
Is just one leak never enough?
I'm a guy who likes a lot of leaks.
Do you love leaks?
True happiness had always eluded me, until Betty sprung a leak. She's so much more flexible now.
Every time you take a leak, are you saddened when it ends?
Hold on.
Then you will love the Bush administration.
Shit! President Bush is a plain-spoken man. I might call him if I need some brush clearing. But I figure I need some experienced leakers to do the job.
Team Bush has experience. In 1992, Karl Rove was fired from Bush Sr.'s presidential campaign for leaking a negative story.
Back in '92, bam! That was before leaking was in style.
I'm not impressed. I'm looking for a team with documented leaking experience in this millennium.
The Bush administration leak portfolio begins. On July 9th, 2003, Joseph Wilson, a retired U.S. diplomat, received a call from Robert Novak asking Wilson to confirm that his wife was a CIA agent.
Hey buddy, someone from the CIA says your wife is an undercover spook. Can you confirm that for me? I need a second source.
If my wife was an undercover spy, why the hell would I tell you?
You pathetic little public servant. You haven't heard the last from Robert Novak.
On July 14th, Novak published his column stating that Joseph Wilson's wife, Valerie Plame, was a CIA operative. In fact, before Novak's column ran, 6 other journalists had been fed information about Valerie Plame. Robert Novak would be the only one to publish the leak.
Somebody calls Bob Novak and other reporters and outs his wife. His wife, Valerie Plame, is a CIA agent working in weapons of mass destruction, a covert agent. They blow her cover. Bob Novak prints it. Bob Novak calls the CIA. They tell him not to print it. He prints it anyway.
White House officials insisted again there is no need for an independent investigation.
It's being addressed by the career professionals at the Department of Justice and FBI.
I have no idea whether we'll find out who the leaker is.
Wilson claims he was targeted for undermining President Bush's State of the Union claim that Iraq was trying to buy uranium from Africa and that Rove told reporters his wife was, quote, fair game. It's not the first time Rove has been in the spotlight because of leaks. In 1992, he was fired as a campaign consultant for the first President Bush, suspected as the source of a leak that the campaign was in shambles. The leak was given to Robert Novak, the same columnist who outed Wilson's wife.
The top of the White House had gone out of their way to get that information out. Not only told Novak, told Time magazine, they wanted that information out.
What you're doing when you expose a CIA officer of any name, you're basically taking their entire career and flushing it down the toilet.
It also has the potential of placing that person in jeopardy because of their operations, and their own operations and people they have operated with in jeopardy. It was a very vengeful act against the ambassador to try to hurt him by hurting his wife's career, if not wishing her physical damage.
If you are a president of the United States and an administration who has come to office on a platform of restoring dignity and honor to the White House, what they did was neither dignified, nor was it terribly honorable, nor was it germane to the issue.
Hey, Joseph Wilson, here's a tip. You don't get to be number one by being a leak crybaby. Team Bush is vindictive. We don't just go after the messenger, we go after their families, so that you don't have to.
That's one hell of a leak. That reminds me of Frito-Lay's Lester potato chips.
That's good and all if revealing the identity of undercover CIA agents is your thing. What about those walking among us, especially during the winter months in Florida? God damn it, you know who I'm talking about.
The Bush administration leak portfolio continues. July 16th, 2003. 10 days before the release of Fahrenheit 9/11, the American public had not yet seen footage of disillusioned U.S. troops. An ABC News reporter was the first to air such a story, and the Bush administration sprang into action.
If Donald Rumsfeld were sitting here at this table with us, what would you say to him?
I don't know if I can really say that on camera.
Donald Rumsfeld was here, I'd ask him for his resignation.
Soon afterwards, this story appeared on the Drudge Report. The popular internet gossip site reported Kaufman is both gay and Canadian. Website operator Matt Drudge says the information came from someone in the White House, an attempt he believes to suggest Kaufman's stories have a liberal bias.
Well, this inquiry continues.
Kaufman is indeed Canadian, having worked for the CBC for many years, and he is openly gay.
I think it's not surprising. In certain ways, a provocative story provokes. I think you just have to kind of look at this and roll your eyes and move on.
Team Bush is petty, outing homosexuals, even when they think they've got nothing to hide.
Superior leakmanship. If Team Bush can get extra gay Matt Drudge to leak other people's gayness, just think what they'll be able to do for me.
Matt Drudge is not gay.
David Brock says that Matt Drudge had a crush on him.
Matt Drudge is like, so not gay.
Alec Baldwin says that Matt Drudge offered to drizzle Tabasco sauce all over him.
Didn't he go to gay bars?
In fact, for the small price of an exclusive interview, foot massage, or government contract, we've acquired multiple entry points into the right-wing media's echo chamber. It's truly a bargain, and we pass the incredible savings on to you.
Mr. Speaker, Dino Ironbody, how do you feel about the president's awesome plan to privatize Social Security?
Syndicated columnist Maggie Gallagher, campaigning for Team Bush to help save marriage for a measly 21,000 tax dollars.
We have the media now.
For the very reasonable price of 240,000 tax dollars from the Department of Education, Armstrong Williams gushed lovingly about No Child Left Behind.
Since there have been so many questions about what the president was doing over 30 years ago, what is it that he did after his honorable discharge from the National Guard? Did he make speeches alongside Jane Fonda denouncing Americans for racist war in Vietnam?
Somebody let in a guy with no media experience, an alias, and a background as an online escort. But why did they let him in if he wasn't even pretending to represent a news organization of any kind? This is videotape of Guckert at the White House press briefing of February 28, 2003. Before the creation of his pseudo-news organization, somebody admitted him to the White House as a reporter named Jeff Gannon. Even though he wasn't Jeff Gannon, he wasn't a reporter, and he wasn't representing any media outlet.
Senate Democratic leaders have painted a very bleak picture of the U.S. economy. How are you going to work? You said you're going to reach out to these people. How are you going to work with people who seem to have divorced themselves from reality?
Mr. McClendon, she got thrown out for 3 months in 2001 because they didn't like the questions she was asking, and she was told for security reasons this 90-year-old reporter couldn't come into the White House. They absolutely decide who does and doesn't come in that door. If you ask the wrong questions, they punish you. And for them to now suggest that some guy who had a shady business background, we're not talking about his personal life, we're talking about his business life. He was hired to construct some websites that basically the web addresses dealt with escort services. I think that that raises enough of a red flag that at least you wonder if this man should be meeting with the President of the United States and getting CIA documents.
The FBI did come to interview me. They were interested in how I knew or received a copy of a confidential CIA memo that said that Valerie Plum suggested Joe Wilson be sent on this mission.
Team Bush is unstoppable. Because if we can leak a classified memo to a gay prostitute, we can leak to anyone.
But I'm only interested in leaks with maximum impact.
What if my leaking needs are peculiar? Maybe I need a leaked identity resulting in a tragedy, which will only be revealed at the end of this video. Or say, a flat tire.
The Bush administration's most spectacular leak occurred on Friday, August 1st, as Tom Ridge raised the terror alert level at a press conference.
This afternoon we do have new and unusually specific information about where Al-Qaeda would like to attack. Reports indicate that Al-Qaeda is targeting Citigroup buildings and the New York Stock Exchange in New York. We must understand that the kind of information available to us today is the result of the President's leadership in the war against terror. The reports that have led to this alert are the result of offensive intelligence and military operations overseas, as well as strong partnerships with our allies around the world, such as Pakistan.
Pakistani intelligence sources are accusing the Bush administration of undermining its fight against al-Qaeda by revealing Khan's name while he was still working as an undercover double agent. Unnamed U.S. officials leaked his name to the press in an attempt of the Bush administration to defend last week's heightened terror threat level.
Respect. I wouldn't even thought of leaking that.
A big break came in the al-Qaeda investigation in Pakistan in June. Mohammed Naeem Noor Khan, who was living in Lahore and was a computer whiz, arrested on July 13th. He was willing to begin informing on al-Qaeda and to keep his correspondence on the line. It was from his computer files that the U.S. learned that there had been a plot against U.S. financial institutions. The decision was made by the Bush White House to release this information, and Tom Ridge came out on Sunday, August 1st, and announced there was such a plot. There would be extra security for those institutions. In the course of the off-the-record briefing the Homeland Security did for the press, a Bush administration official mentioned that the information had come from Mohammed Naeem Noor Khan. Now, he was still a double agent and was undercover and was sending email messages on Sunday and the following Monday to his al-Qaeda contacts in London, who still thought he was on the inside. The next day, the New York Times printed the name, and it's a principle that you don't tell the press things you don't want to see in the newspapers. That caused a big furor in Pakistan and the United Kingdom, where there were ongoing sting operations being run through Khan. And the British had to swoop in and arrest 13 of Khan's correspondents, lest they scatter once they heard he had been arrested. And in fact, they lost 5 of them, and many they're going to have to release for lack of evidence. So the cases hadn't been made. And Faisal Saleh Hayat, who is the Pakistani Interior Minister, is just furious, and he said that, Khan is the kind of asset that could eventually have led to bin Laden himself had he not been outed. It's very clear from the reaction in Britain that they are very upset. MI5 actually has given an interview to the New York Times in which they have complained about the damage that was done to the ongoing cases. Condi Rice admitted that the name had been, in fact, provided to the press on background. And then she said she didn't know if he was a double agent. And Home Secretary David Blunkett, in an op-ed criticizing the Bush administration for having done this, because his name was revealed in the press, they have no choice but to attempt to arrest these people. In many instances, they may not actually have enough evidence against them to hold them, because being in email contact with Mohammed Naeem Noor Khan is not a crime. We now know that the information was very old, that it is often said by the Bush administration officials that it had been updated as recently as January of 2004, but The Guardian has revealed that what they really mean is the file had been opened as recently as January 2004. No new information was added to it. We don't have evidence of ongoing operational activities. So it's old information, and they dried up this potentially very rich well of further tracking and information. Might have led to bin Laden himself, might have led to a very severe crippling of al-Qaeda operational capabilities, might have led to successful court cases against a whole range of operatives in London and elsewhere.
Sounds like Team Bush might meet my leaking needs, and then some.
Tell me, please, I'm dying to know. What's their secret?
Media watchers in Washington say the apparent attempt to undermine Kaufman is outrageous.
An attempt to discredit an ABC television reporter is just flabbergasting.
The White House is not denying that one of its officials spread the information, but insisted the administration does not condone the action, calling it inappropriate.
Team Bush, rule number 1. Zero accountability.
Does the president retain confidence in Karl Rove?
Yes.
The question of whether a law has been broken, a crime committed, is a separate matter. You're not going to resolve that. That's for a grand jury to decide. We know what the facts are. We know that Karl Rove spoke about Joseph Wilson's wife, referring to the fact that she worked at the agency. And does the president think that it was fair of him to do that? Was it fair game?
Now, that's the question related to an ongoing investigation.
There's a difference between what's legal and what's right. Is what Karl Rove did right?
Well, I mean, you can state the obvious. I understand and appreciate that, and I appreciate you all. I know you all want to get to the bottom of this. I want to get to the bottom of it. The president has said no one wants to get to the bottom of it more than he does. The best way to help the investigation is for me not to discuss it.
You say you won't discuss it, but the Republican National Committee and others working obviously on behalf of the White House, they put out this Wilson-Rove research and talking points distributed to Republican surrogates, which include things like Karl Rove discouraged a reporter from writing a false story. And then other Republican surrogates are getting information such as Bill Kristol on Fox News, a friendly news channel to you, said that the conversation lasted for 2 minutes, and it was just at the end that Rove discussed this. So someone is providing this information. Are you behind the scenes directing a response to this story?
The president directed the White House to cooperate fully with the investigation. That means not commenting on it from this podium.
Well,
I understand your question.
And other Republican surrogates are essentially saying that the conversation lasted for 2 minutes and that the subject was ostensibly welfare reform. They're getting that information from here, from Karl Rove.
And again, you're asking questions that are related to news reports about an ongoing, continuing investigation.
Does the president stand by his pledge to fire anyone involved in the leak of the name of a CIA operative?
Terry, I appreciate your question, and as I've previously stated, while that investigation is ongoing, the White House is not going to comment on it.
In June of 2004, the president said that he would fire anybody who was involved in the leak, in this leak of classified information. I just wanted to know, is that still his position?
Yeah, but this question is coming up in the context of this ongoing investigation, and that's why I said that our policy continues to be that we're not going to get into commenting on an ongoing criminal investigation from this podium.
Do you stand by your statement from the fall of 2003 when you were asked specifically about Karl and Elliot Abrams and Scooter Libby, and you said, I've gone to each of those gentlemen and they have told me they are not involved in this? Do you stand by that statement?
As part of helping the investigators move forward on the investigation, we're not going to get into commenting on it. That was something I stated back near that time as well.
God, this is ridiculous. You've got a public record out there. Do you stand by your remarks from that podium or not?
I will be glad to talk about it at the appropriate time. The appropriate time is when the investigation...
When it's appropriate, when it's inappropriate.
If you'll let me finish.
No, you're not finishing. You're not saying anything. You stood at that podium and said that Karl Rove was not involved, and now we find out that he spoke about Joseph Wilson's wife. So don't you owe the American public a fuller explanation? Was he involved or was he not? Because contrary to what you told the American people, he did indeed talk about his wife, didn't he?
David, there will be a time to talk about this, but now is not the time to talk about it.
Do you think people will accept that, what you're saying today?
Again, I've responded to the question.
Well, you're in a bad spot here, Scott, because after the investigation began, after the criminal investigation was underway, you said, October 10th, 2003, I spoke with those individuals, Rove, Abrams, and Libby. As I pointed out, those individuals assured me they were not involved in this. From that podium. That's after the criminal investigation began. Now that Rove has essentially been caught red-handed, peddling this information, all of a sudden you have respect for the sanctity of the criminal investigation?
No, that's not a correct characterization, Terry, and I think you are well aware of that. We know each other very well, and it was after that period that the investigators had requested that we not get into commenting on an ongoing criminal investigation. And we want to be helpful so that they can get to the bottom of this, because no one wants to get to the bottom of it more than the President of the United States.
So you're now saying that after you cleared Rove and the others from that podium, then the prosecutors asked you not to speak anymore, and since then you have.
Again, you're continuing to ask questions relating to an ongoing criminal investigation.
I think it's best that people wait until the investigation is complete before you jump to conclusions. And I will do so as well. I don't know all the facts. I want to know all the facts. But the best place for the facts to be done is by somebody who's spending time investigating it.
His problem. 2 years and he can't call Rove in and find out what the hell's going on.
The hell in it.
Why is it so difficult to find out the facts? It costs thousands, millions of dollars, 2 years, tied up how many lawyers? All he's got to do is call him in.
You just heard from the president. He said he doesn't know all the facts. I don't know all the facts.
Why?
We want to know what the facts are because...
Why did he ask him?
I'll tell you why. Because there's an investigation that is continuing at this point.
I would like this to end as quickly as possible so we know the facts.
We don't know all the facts, but we know some of the facts. For example, Matt Cooper says he did speak to Karl Rove and Louis Libby about these issues. So given the fact that you had previously stood at that podium and said these men did not discuss Valerie Plame or a CIA agent's identity in any way, does the White House have a credibility problem?
No, you just answered your own question. You said we don't know all the facts.
And if someone committed a crime, they will no longer work in my administration.
Would that be a crime as determined by an indictment or a crime as determined by a conviction?
Again, Bob, I'm not going to add to what the President said.
But the importance is the question of would, if it is the latter, the strategy be to run out the clock.
Now, I indicated to you earlier that everyone here serves at the pleasure of the President. Do you have questions on another topic?
Tell me more. Team Bush has so much to teach.
In London on September 2004, Tom Ridge tittered nervously as he called the leak regrettable and lamented that no one really knew the source. 1 month later, he resigned.
Well, of course Team Bush had to get rid of him. He broke rule number 2 and ignored rule number 3. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped ahead.
1 month later, as Presidential Medals of Freedom were being passed out like candy bars to team members, Tom would have a quiet moment to reflect on Team Bush rule number 2.
Waiting for rule number 2? I'm so anxious to learn.
Never apologize.
Is there regret from this administration of what it has done to the Wilson family with the CIA leak? And I talked to Mr. Wilson prior to going into the East Room, and he basically said the American people deserve an apology and that his family was basically collateral damage in a bigger picture.
All these questions are getting into prejudging the outcome of the investigation, and we're not going to do that.
But the President acknowledged that there was a problem, and it could be a criminal problem. If he acknowledged that, isn't there some sort of regret?
It's a criminal investigation. We don't know all the facts to it.
Is there any regret from this White House that it has caused an American family who worked for this government?
I heard what you had to say, and I've already answered it.
Democrats are presenting a letter to Rove demanding he retract his statement and apologize within the next couple of days. Otherwise, they'll ask Mr. Bush to seek Rove's resignation.
Wednesday night, Karl Rove said, and I quote, "Conservatives saw the savagery of 9/11 in the effects in the attacks and prepared for war.
Liberals saw the savagery of the 9/11 attacks and wanted to prepare indictments and offer therapy and understanding to our attackers."
That's not slander. That's the truth.
Karl was simply pointing out the differences that exist in how we approach the war on terrorism.
Well, obviously you don't want to be apologizing for leaks all the time, if you're leaking all the time. Anybody will tell you that. But that whole liberal thing, well, that's not really a leak. Are we going to stay on topic here?
Team Bush can do whatever Team Bush wants because of rule number 3. Balls of steel.
Excuse me?
You heard Team Bush. Balls of steel.
That's not even a rule.
Team Bush will say what is and isn't a rule, because Team Bush has balls of steel.
Balls of steel!
Now you've got it. Big, brassy balls of steel.
The situation has evolved throughout the day. What was initially reported as a set of explosions in electrical transformers has clearly evolved into terrorist attacks across London. What has been targeted have been London's underground, its subway. The London Underground system has been shut down. We also know that there was at least one explosion on board a double-decker bus in central London. Eyewitnesses telling us that as they walked past the bus just about 4 hours ago now, there was an explosion on board. They turned their head. They saw the top coming off the bus.
I heard a very loud bang. The lights went out and the carriage filled with smoke. People were thrown forward. People were severely injured there. But I've heard, and I don't know if it's right, that people were even worse further back.
The bombings were the deadliest since a V-2 rocket attack on London in World War II, with over 50 confirmed dead and 70 people reported missing.
Wow, that's enough to fill like 10 Land Rovers.
Team Bush's leaking puts all other administrations to shame.
Bush can't take credit for that!
Why? Because the Bush administration leaked Khan's name?
The kind of information available to us today is the result of the President's leadership in the war against terror. The reports that have led to this alert are the result of strong partnerships with our allies, such as Pakistan.
Pakistani intelligence sources are accusing the Bush administration of undermining its fight against al-Qaeda by revealing Khan's name while he was still working as an undercover double agent.
And Faisal Saleh Hayat, who is the Pakistani Interior Minister, is just furious, and he said that, Khan is the kind of asset that could eventually have led to bin Laden himself had he not been outed.
Yeah, I caught that the first time. I'm a busy girl with a lot of information to leak. You'll have to do better than that.
Skepticism is like a dagger through the Bush administration's heart.
When Homeland Security Secretary Tom Ridge raised the terror alert level on certain financial buildings in New York, New Jersey, and Washington, D.C. last summer, he cited intelligence that was very specific and very alarming. But there is new information that maybe those areas weren't the true target.
It turns out, while much of the alarm at the time was about the casing of these financial buildings in New York, Washington, and Newark, New Jersey, there was an actual active al-Qaeda plot on involving some of the characters who did that casing, but they weren't plotting to attack New York, New Jersey, or Washington. They weren't plotting to attack anything in the United States at all. The active plot involved a big bomb attack in London. The ring that was at the center of that, which was headed by suspect Iran Birot, otherwise known as Essam al-Hindi, was smashed back a few months ago. They are now incarcerated, but the original intelligence seems to have been off the mark about what their aim and goal was. There has been a bit of alarm among U.S. agents stationed in Britain. In fact, FBI agents were so spooked by some of this intelligence that they have been reluctant to take the London Underground. They've been taking taxis rather than the subways because apparently the Underground was supposed to be part of the plot.
A Kerry advisor is blaming politics for the timing of that security threat. Is there some indication at all, Michael, that there was politics at play?
A little bit. For one thing, it is worth noting that that announcement back on August 1st was 3 days after the Democratic Convention. It had a big political impact in suppressing John Kerry's bounce in the polls that he was getting from the convention, changing the conversation in Washington and nationally from the Kerry candidacy to the terror threat, which is exactly what the Bush administration wanted. That's the change they wanted. Now, does that mean that the original alert itself was ginned up for political reasons? No, there was genuinely alarming intelligence, but the timing of the announcement, the way it was made, and some of Ridge's comments at the time fed this conclusion by many that there was politics involved.
Leak of Khan's capture. Result, over 50 dead.
Respect.
Team Bush. Leaking like a greasy asshole.
My administration was never able to leak like that.
The Bush administration couldn't do it alone. It takes teamwork, dedication, and balls of steel.
There's more and more smoke coming through into the carriage. The carriage, people started smashing the windows with bare hands, umbrellas. There were no emergency hammers, there was no emergency procedures, there was no intercom messages from the driver as to what was going on or how to exit the train. People were screaming, fighting, and then the more and more smoke came in, people started saying the last prayers, as it were, last messages to the loved ones. People then became more and more agitated, thinking they were going to die. And then time started to roll on. People were still smashing windows, pulling the doors open with their bare hands, trying to get any form of oxygen into the carriage.
They're now at the G8 summit, where their topic number one, believe it or not, was global warming. Their second was African aid, and that was the first time since 9/11 when they should know, and they do know now, that terrorism should be number one.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. Just changed.
Yeah, but it's important for all of them to be together. I think that works to our advantage.
It takes global warming off the front burner. It takes African aid off the front burner. It sticks terrorism and the fight and the war on terror right up front all over again.
Fox. Balls of steel.
It was just black and we just got out, so we have no idea.
Here after the explosion.
Screaming.
Station, a large number of Middle Eastern restaurants, so it's a further indication, if indeed these attacks were carried out by Al-Qaeda affiliated cells, that these people are, if necessary, prepared to spill Arab blood in addition to the blood of regular, of non-Arab people living in London.
Balls of steel.
There's a large flash of light. Felt a burning sensation on my hands, put my hands up to my face.
You know, the market was down. It was down yesterday, and you know, you may have had some bargain hunting going on. I mean, my first thought when I heard, just on a personal basis, when I heard that there had been this attack, and I saw the futures this morning, which were really in the tank, I thought, Time to buy. There seems to be no great fear that something like that is going to happen here, although there's no indication that we here had any advance warning.
Balls of steel.
The bombings in London. This is why I thought the Brits should have let the French have the Olympics. Let somebody else be worried about guys with backpack bombs for a while.
International Olympic Committee missed a golden opportunity today. If they had picked France instead of London to hold the Olympics, it would have been the one time where we didn't worry about terrorism. They'd blow up Paris, and who cares?
Rock hard, balls of steel.
40 people dead, 150 seriously wounded, 1,000 wounded out of over 1 million people in that transit tube. It's not a successful terrorist attack, folks. They didn't succeed in doing anything.
Big fat balls of steel.
Early on in the leaks probe, the president himself said those responsible would be held accountable.
If there's a leak out of my administration, I want to know who it is. If the person has violated law, the person will be taken care of.
The president never actually said the word fired, but that is what some reporters and Democrats seem to expect.
The White House promised if anyone was involved, they would no longer be in this administration, his administration.
The president never actually said the word fired, but that is what some reporters and Democrats seem to expect.
Balls of steel.
There are some who feel like that, the conditions are such that they can attack us there. My answer is bring them on.
Balls of steel.
Once again, John, this senseless, bloody attack is a reminder to all Americans that the president's war on terror is working.
How are the attacks proof the war on terror is working?
Look, John, the president invaded Iraq in order to fight the war on terror over there, so he wouldn't have to fight it in America. And as you can see, I'm not in America.
In my day, we didn't go leaking things all willy-nilly.
All leaks can't be good, can they?
Some sorry individuals insist that leaking intelligence information is a bad thing. Here's a helpful tip. Don't be a leak crybaby.
So Wilson has no right to complain, and I think people like Tim Russett and the others who gave this guy such a free ride and all the media, they're the ones to be shot, not Karl Rove. Listen, maybe Karl Rove wasn't perfect. We live in an imperfect world, and I give him credit for having thoughts.
I say give Karl Rove a medal, even if Bush has to fire him. Why? Because Valerie Plame should have been outed by somebody, and nobody else had the cojones to do it. I'm glad Rove did, if he did do it, and he still says he didn't. Wilson was opposed to the war in Iraq, opposed Bush policy, and pointedly and loudly said so. Consequently, it was some interest how he got chosen for this sensitive job, which people at the time might have thought would be a fulcrum point for a decision about the war.
I received a call from the CIA. In February 2002. It was during the course of that briefing that they said that they had received a report that had piqued the interest of the Office of the Vice President of a purported memorandum of agreement authorizing the sale of uranium yellowcake from Niger to Iraq, and it was a document that was executed by the government of Niger. They asked me if I would be willing to go out and take another look at it and talk to people I knew there.
You wouldn't send a peacenik to see if we should go to war, if we need to go to war, now would you? That's exactly what happened. As they say in the news business, inquiring minds now want to know, how the heck did this happen? Well, it turns out little wifey did it. She touted husband Joe, her CIA boss's bit, and off Wilson went to completely knock down any notion that Saddam wanted Niger's nuke bomb-making stuff, which is called yellowcake.
I'd spent the 8 days there drinking mint tea and talking to everybody there was to talk to who knew anything about the subject matter in Niamey. And I'd come back persuaded that that could not have happened. One, from a business perspective, because of the way the consortium was structured, you just couldn't do it without a lot of people knowing. And two, the way the government bureaucracy was structured, you could not make the decision without a lot of people knowing. And if you made the decision would be reflected in a series of signatures on the documents. And if the documents did not contain those signatures, they could not be authentic government of Niger documents.
Problem is, the report of the Select Committee on Intelligence says the information showed no such thing, that in fact it was still a bit of a mystery, and Saddam could well have been trying to buy the nuke bomb material.
We all know that the documentation on yellowcake from Niger was a fake, but why doesn't anybody say who did it? Who is putting this intelligence out there and why? And I don't think that question's been answered, and maybe because the answer is known, and it's not a pleasant one.
While you're asking questions, here's another one. How'd you get to be such a big leak crybaby?
As a man afflicted with uromycetosis, I can attest, not all leaks are good leaks.
Leak killed my daddy, and it had big sharp teeth.
When I was shot down in that war, and I remember how terrified I was, and it made me feel close to my family and to God and to life, and I was scared.
Sounds like another crybaby. A leak crybaby.
We need more protection for the methods we use to gather intelligence, and more protection for our sources, particularly our human sources, people that are risking their lives for their country. And even though I'm a tranquil guy now at this stage of my life,
I have nothing but contempt and anger for those who betray the trust by exposing the name of our sources. They are, in my view, the most insidious of traitors.
Whoa, that guy's a bit of a downer. I guess I won't be asking him to leak anything.
So what now? I've got a satchel full of classified documents, and I'm raring to go.
You are in luck, because right now, for a limited time only, the Bush administration has a special offer. We're leaking state secrets at half price.
Count me in. Let's get leaking.
Call the White House now at 202-456-1414, and we'll put you through to one of our leak facilitators. And if you ask for our leaking like a greasy asshole special offer, we'll leak the sexual orientation of any news reporter at no extra cost. That's 2 leaks for the price of just 1. If you can leak classified information any cheaper than that, then leak it. Call right now. Operators are standing by. We accept Visa, MasterCard, and in the case of Karl Rove's lawyer, gold bricks. For more information on leaking packages and payment options, please visit leakinglikeagreasyasshole.com. This message has been brought to you by Team Bush. Team Bush. Leaking like a greasy asshole.
Walmart, Embark, Ronnie McDee's, Halliburton, Talisman, Mighty G, Lars, Oliver, Channel RIAA, NRA, CNN, MPW. W's Dick and Coulter, O'Reilly's spitting venom. Donald Trump, Microsoft, MTV, Ticketmaster, Eminem, Bountiful BC, Bling, Beavis, Fox News, Seacrest out, Craigslist, Botox, Paris, Pow. O'Reilly's Dick and W, Coulter, spitting venom.
For those of you who thought we might not have been respectful enough for one of the president's chief aides, Karl Rove, I do want to remind everybody that the president's nickname for Karl Rove is Turd Blossom.